Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. Currently, we are in 2 Samuel chapter 11. Now, this is going to be sort of a turning point for David. It's going to be it is going to be one of his darkest moments. The sin of adultery with Bathsheba. However, it's not his worst sin or the darkest sin. There's going to be so much in this chapter that that is really bad for David. It's disgusting. That David will cause the death of people to cover his sin. So it's bad. Now, also, we're going to see how God handles it. God is not like man. He doesn't cover sin. And even though David is a man after his own heart, God doesn't cover this. And we will see how God deals with this. All right, here we go. I would also say this, that there is still mercy nonetheless. So even though David did a very bad thing, a horrendous thing, God's mercy is bigger than that. All right, it says in the spring, when kings marched out to war, David sent Joab with his officers and all of Israel, and they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. Now, some people say that this might have been a fault here. The Bible doesn't necessarily say this. In the spring, the kings marched out to war. However, David stayed in Jerusalem. In and of itself is not the cause by any means. Verse 2. One evening, David got up from his bed and strolled around the roof of the palace. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing. Beautiful woman. A very beautiful woman. So David sent someone to inquire about her, and he reported that this is Bathsheba, the daughter of Elam, wife of Uriah the Hittite. Now that's going to be a very important name that I'm going to tell you later on about him, but Uriah the Hittite. Now David knows Uriah, by the way, and then notice this: he's on the roof and she's bathing. Now these kinds of stories have a way you could add a lot into them, and just know that the Bible at this point is just simply telling the story. It is not necessarily giving us commentary on the story, but some of the commentary is kind of interesting. Like, for example, did Bathsheba intentionally entice David? She's a very beautiful woman, right? And so did she know David was going to be strolling out on his porch, and then did she just happen to be taking a bath, at that time? Inquiring minds want to know, okay? But that is conjecture. All right, so at this point, as I said, all we know is she could have just been, how does she know the activities of the king, the business of the king, when he strolls or when he doesn't stroll? You can refute that easily because, first of all, she could have thought he was out with her husband in war, therefore she's out bathing. So there's a lot of ways of looking at that, okay? So, all right, let's go on. Verse 4. Now, it's kind of interesting that David then sends messengers. He asks about her first and go, who is this woman right here? Man, she's fine, right? Who is she? Verse 4. David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to him, he slept with her. Now, she had just been purifying herself from her uncleanness. Afterwards, she returned home, meaning she just got off of her period. So, of course, we now know where this is going to go. Okay? I'm old enough to remember that time where, man, being on the pill, you had to watch that. Birth control is a lot better these days. Okay, but so and it doesn't seem to be a lot of resistance from Bathsheba. In other words, this is not in any kind of, this is consensual in every way. Now you have to also remember that David was a beloved king. He was very admired. If David were alive today, he would have been Hollywood's dream person. You think about some of the presidents that we've had that were, they dominated the media because of their personality, because of their looks, and David had all of that. David had it all. Okay, he was handsome. He was a man's man, right? So he was the epitome of man. So there was a lot of women that would have willingly done what Bathsheba did. Okay, because David he was just that kind of person. Verse 5. The woman conceived and sent word to inform David, I am pregnant. And David sent orders to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent Uriah to David. Now, right here is, remember in my title I said that the adultery wasn't the darkest sin. And here comes the darkest sin, the cover-up. Okay? And by the way, if you stop and think about this, I don't know why David even thought he would have gotten away with this, which we're getting ready to see. There are so many levels here. Okay, so many levels here. Okay, so the first thing is to cover. So the first sin was the adultery. Well, let me even step back. The first sin was the lust. Right? You think about this right now. So here you didn't have to have pornography. Here you had in living color right here, right? The lust and then the adultery. And because of his position, he is able to make this happen, right? Now also take note, other people know about this, right? His messengers knew about this. The people in the palace knew about this. So understand that. Everybody knew about this. Verse 7, when Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab and the troops were doing and how the war was going. Now, this is a kind of a pretense, right? David, right? If he wanted to know about the war, he would have asked Joab himself. Or he just would have had Joab send a messenger. A messenger could have sent and reported that. Verse 8. Then he said to verse 8. Then he said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. Now, so Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king followed him. A gift basket. Now I say that because my wife is in the gift basket. The gift basket, right? He would have said, hey, Bill, make a basket for Uriah. Okay. So it's going from bad to worse here, right? Now, David, in this sense, is now, go to your wife. You know, you're a fine wife. You're a very fine wife. You need to go there, right? But like I said, I don't know why David thought this was going to work, because wouldn't everybody know that the kid wasn't Uriah? I mean, wouldn't everybody go, that baby does not look like Uriah's. That look like, besides the rumors, everybody already know the rumors. The rumors would have spread, and then everybody would have known anyway. Verse 9, but Uriah slept at the door of the palace with all his master's servants, and he did not go down to his house. And when it was reported to David, Uriah didn't go home. David questioned Uriah, haven't you just come from a journey? Why didn't you go home, and sleep with your fine wife? Uriah answered David, the ark, Israel and Judah are dwelling in tents, and my master Joab and his soldiers are camping in the open field. How can I enter my house to eat, drink, and sleep with my wife? But surely as you live and by your life, I will not do this. Stay here today also, David said to Uriah, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the next. Then David invited Uriah to eat and drink with him. And David got him drunk. He went out in the evening to lie down on his cot with his master's servant, but he did not go home. So he's desperately now trying, hey, go sleep with your wife. Man, I slept with your wife. She's fine. Why won't you go with her? Verse 14. The next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In the letter he wrote, put Uriah at the front of the fierce fighting, then withdraw from him so that he is struck down and dies. And when Joab was besieging the city, he put Uriah. Now let me stop here for a moment because there's a lot of, there's just so much wrong here. I want you to understand something here. Uriah is being punished because he is faithful, because he is a good soldier. And what is worse is that he is carrying his death sentence. And because he's faithful, now, maybe you and I would have said, I wonder what this letter's in, right? Let me kind of open the letter a little bit and just read it. He didn't. He was faithful. He carried it. Now, also, again, it gets bad to worse. He then enlists the services of wicked Joab, his nephew, his military commander. Joab didn't care about being king, but he did care about his lane was the military. And David could not handle him. He was wicked. He did evil stuff, and David couldn't handle it. And now David is going to ally with Joab. This is even worse. Verse 16, when Joab was besieging the city, he put Uriah in the place where he knew the best enemy soldiers were. Then the men of the city came out and attacked Joab, and some of the men from David's soldiers fell in battle. And Uriah the Hittite also died. And Joab sent someone to report to David all the details of the battle. He commanded the messengers, when you are finished telling the king all the details of the battle, the king's anger gets stirred up and asks you, why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you realize they would shoot from the top of the wall at Thebes, who struck Abimelech, son of Jerubbesheth? Didn't the woman drop an upper millstone from the top of the wall so that he died? Why did you get so close to the wall? Then say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. Now let's stop. So what is even worse now is we see that Joab took advantage of the situation and had some other people killed. Maybe he didn't like them. We don't know. We don't know the details. That's not the focus of the story. But there were other soldiers who died. And so now David has caused, right? David has caused the death of other soldiers. And so Joab just said, look, if the king gets, he kind of anticipated, if the king gets mad, just tell him, hey, look, we got, we did this because of your orders. He says, now get this. Uriah, the Hittite is dead also. Okay, verse 22. Then the messengers left, and when he had arrived, he reported to David all that Joab had sent him to tell him. The messengers reported to David, "The men gained advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we counterattacked right up to the entrance of the gate when they got close to the wall." Now, understand, note this. There are soldiers, they are remembering history. That's why I wanted to remember. We read this in the book of in the book of Judges, where you had this fierce battle, and this guy simply died because an old woman dropped a millstone on his head and broke his neck. I'm saying is they learned from that history, and that's why Joab is anticipating he might get criticized by what? You know this story. Why did you go so close to the wall? Verse 24, he says, "However, the archers shot down on your soldiers from the top of the wall, and some of the king's soldiers died, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead." Now, maybe, and I'm going to add here, maybe David is thinking he wants to get mad at the other soldiers, but what can he do? He's put himself in this god-awful situation right here. That under normal circumstances, he would have probably criticized, maybe even punished Joab. He probably wouldn't have punished Joab because Joab was out of control anyway. Joab certainly took advantage. And as I said, this is conjecture. The story doesn't focus on that. But in order to accomplish what David wanted, other soldiers died as well. Verse 25, David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab. Don't let this matter upset you, because the sword devours alike. Intensify your fight against the city and demolish it. Encourage him." Think about that. That's right, wrong. It also tells us that we don't always know the details of it, do it. We don't always know why things happen behind the scenes. This happened. He said, just strengthen, go on and fight. Verse 26, when Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah had died, she mourned for him. And when the time of her mourning ended, David had her brought to his house. She became his wife and bore him a son. However, the Lord considered what David had done to be evil. And as I said, he done all kinds of evil here. All kinds of evil. It's interesting. She was sorry. And again, you might think, did she have any hope that she would be David's wife? Again, we don't know a lot about Bathsheba, other than she's very fine. But here is the interesting thing about Uriah. And we're going to find this later on, that Uriah was not only a faithful servant. He was not only a faithful servant, right? This is the kind of soldier. This is the kind of servant you want, right? He was not only, he is one of David's great 30. The list of 30. We're going to see this at the end of the book, where it gives the accomplishments. In other words, in order to be in this list of David's mighty 30 men, in order to even make this list, you have to be a bad dude. You have to accomplish some stuff, and Uriah was one of them. This is whom he had killed because he was faithful. Because David cheated with his wife. David cheated with his wife. And to cover up his sin, then David has him murdered because he's faithful. He wouldn't go home and sleep with his wife. And as I said, even if you had that, even if Uriah had went home and slept with his wife, right? You know, go home and go, "Oh, honey, I missed you. You're fine," right? Did we say Bathsheba was a fine woman? He did not think that people would know that the son doesn't look like him. Okay, so this is a dark time for David. This is a dark time for David. And notice, God also knows. And as the saying goes, be sure your sin won't find you out. All right, guys, we'll see you in chapter 12 in the next study.